Welcome to Village Church. Glad you are joining for week 2 of You Are Not a Glitch. My name is Zach, and I'm joined with Kristen, and we are part of the Village online team here at Village Church.
And something really neat I've been thinking about personally is we have this beautiful online church where we are watching from all different parts of the world.
Yeah.
East, west, and the beautiful thing is we are engaging together. But not only that, I've been thinking about what does it actually mean for us in our living rooms or wherever we're watching to actually be a church together?
Right.
What does that actually look like? How do we live in community where we're challenging each other, we're edifying each other, what the Bible says of how we should be doing life together?
Right.
And I think the answer is community groups.
I think so too.
I think it's community groups. And so we are starting in the fall. We are starting right now. Community groups, not only can you sign up for one, but we're also looking for leaders. And I think sometimes it's like a daunting thing of leading a community group, but it's not. It really isn't. You're hosting a place where people can join in and find community with each other. And tell us more, what's a leader? What does a leader do?
Yeah, so I love what you're saying. I think here at Village Church, we love community groups, but it's not because of what that is. We love community.
That's true.
Doing church together means being in relationship with others. So we have a bunch of different types of groups. We have some that go through the sermon curriculum, some do Alpha, some do old sermon series. Just in fact, we have a group in Swift Current, Saskatchewan, shout out. They just finished Alpha, and now they're going through the 7 Deadly Sins series. That was a series we did a year or two ago.
Yeah.
And they actually they have an atheist, they have an agnostic, they had a couple people that really wanted to start a relationship with Jesus. And that's what we're about here at Village Church, and that's all because of you. And really, that is the mission of Village. And you make that all possible. The reason that we can do sermon series like this, and we can run groups like that, and we can start new curriculum and have new classes that are coming up in a couple weeks. We'll tell you more soon.
Yes.
But it's all thanks to you. You make the mission we do to see people transformed into fully devoted followers of Jesus. You make that possible. And if you want to partner with us and join the mission, you can go to thisisvillagechurch.com/give. If you want to join a group or you have questions about that, go to thisisvillagechurch.com/groups. We want to connect. We want to be the church, just like you were saying, Kristen.
Absolutely. And with all of that, with all the people that we can't see, but we know that are worshiping together in this moment, let's move in to a time of worship.
You see
No mighty fortress, you go before us. Nothing can stand against the power of our God. You shine in the shadow, you win every battle. Nothing can stand against the power of our God. An almighty fortress, you go before us. Nothing can stand against the power of our God. You shine in the shadow, you win every battle. Nothing can stand against the power of our God. An almighty fortress, you go before us. Nothing can stand against the power of our God. You shine in the shadow, you win every battle. Nothing can stand against the power of our God. So when I fight, I'll fight on my knees with my head lifted high. Oh God, the battle belongs to you. Every fear I lay at your feet. I sing through the night. Oh God, the battle belongs to you. Oh God, the battle belongs to you.
Well, hello. Good to see ya. My name is Victor. I'm the lead pastor here at this location. It's good to be with you. I'm part of the preaching team. It is a delight to continue on in our series called You Are Not a Glitch. Personally, I find it so fascinating, the idea of technology and how it affects our daily lives. Like when my kids are yelling at our Alexa, making all these demands like it's a slave, I'm just curious how this is gonna pan out for like their relationships when they're older, like their marriages potentially. I just find that so fascinating. And I find it fascinating, the progression of technology and how it is affecting our interpersonal relationships and actually how it relates to us on that level. It's interesting, in 1970, there was this project done at MIT with a whole bunch of students, one professor, they called it ELIZA. And what it really was this huge bulky computer, you can imagine it's the 70s. And it played this role of like a pseudo-psychotherapist. And so you would write in things like, I'm angry at my mom, and it would compute what you said and give you a response. It would say, tell me more about mother. It'd be pretty barbaric, pretty archaic, but this was actually groundbreaking for the 70s of how computers could actually communicate with people. Like that was a big deal. Now we have Alexa and all these things, but for the 70s, that was groundbreaking, to be relational with computers. This idea of relationality, it really is the thrust of today's sermon. And we're parking it in the beginning of Scripture in Genesis 1 to 3. And today we're gonna be pressing into, if you have your Bibles, Genesis 1, verse 26, and we'll go right to 28. It says this, then God said, let us make mankind in our image, in our likeness, so that they may rule over the fish in the sea and the birds of the sky, over the livestock and all the wild animals and over the creatures that move along the ground. So God created mankind in his own image. In his image, God created them. Male and female, he created them. It's interesting, right? The first verse there says, let us make mankind in our image. We see this plurality of God. We're introduced to the triune God, the Trinity. God, the Father, the Son, the Spirit, three persons, one God. I know it's complicated. We're going to shelf that. We won't have time to unpack that. But here is the point. Equally God, equally engaged in his creation. And then it says we're made in his image, in his likeness. It's where we get this doctrine, the image of God, where we find our value, our purpose, our identity is in the fact that male and female mutually reflecting the traits and the characteristics of God, his goodness, his authority, his mercy, his kindness, all these things. But today, one I want to press into a little further is his relationality, that God is a relational God. And this can actually only be true, catch this, if he is triune. Like for all eternities past, he loved himself. The Father loved the Son loved the Spirit. And if he was just one person, it was just the Father, it was just the Son, he intrinsically couldn't be loving. He couldn't be relational. He couldn't say that about himself because he had no creation to love. I think Richard Sybes hits it perfectly in The Successful Seeker. He says, the Father, Son, and Spirit were happy in themselves and enjoyed one another before the world was. But the Father so enjoyed the fellowship with his Son that he wanted to have this goodness of it spread and communicated and shared with everyone, with others. The creation was a free choice born out of nothing but love. So it's a lot like a fountain. Like God's relationality, his love, his goodness just overflows into his creating. And in that abundant overflow, Adam and Eve are marked in that same likeness, in the likeness of a God who deeply considers the other. His posture is towards other all the time. That's who he is. And if we zoom out for a bit of this creation narrative, I think Cornelius Plantinga kind of frames it in a really interesting way. This is what he says. God begins to do some creative separating. He separates light from darkness, day from night, water from land, sea creatures from land cruisers. But at the same time, he binds things together. He binds humans, the rest of creation, as stewards and caretakers of it, to himself as bearers of his image. And catch this, and to each other as perfect complements. Like everything in God's creative order just interplays, it's interwoven, it's interdependent on itself. And us, we are bound to each other as Adam and Eve were. We're made for each other. And this isn't really a belief or a worldview or a way of thinking. This is just a design statement that you were objectively, whether you believe it or not, sociologically, philosophically, theologically, biologically wired in your very DNA for relationships. You are a relational being. Now, this may not be a massive surprise for many of us because we know in the core of who we are, in that deep part of who we are, those feelings, those sweet feelings of like when you plan to stay at a friend's house till like 10 p.m. because you have work the next day, but you find yourself there past 1 o'clock, sharing some wine, talking about the most deep and meaningful things of life. Or when your kids, when your kids tell you jokes and they're so lame and one-dimensional, like they're just terrible jokes, but you laugh out of being polite. But that time when they actually get you, like it's actually funny, and you're laughing and they're laughing, and then you're just this cycle of like, you're just hysterically laughing, like belly ache, like tears in the eyes, you're connecting with your kids on that level. Or it's that first date. That first date, everything's awkward, things where you're fumbling, you don't really know what you're saying or what you do, but you feel the undertone of like, there's a connection here. You feel like there's a potential future moving forward that none of you are even like thinking about your meals the overpriced meals you've paid for that you can't even afford. Like that is like these moments that are rich, that we reminisce about for years, that bind us, connect us. When we think about life and where the best things of life are, it's about being known and seen by others. That is where life is. Yeah, I think for many of us, this feels fleeting, far and few in between. And if we're honest, sometimes we feel like we're almost moving the opposite direction that we're designed for. I think about even like house construction, randomly. Like houses back in the day would have like deep front porches, right? They'd have deep front porches with chairs in the front, the white picket fence that would be no more than like 4 feet high, a very inviting front lawn. You could see the kids like playing, hockey or riding bikes. You could see the neighbor, Rick, Sue, John, you say hi. Like that would be a very communal experience. You build houses nowadays, the deck is moved to the back with the hot tub. Now we have these 6 feet cedar panels for the sake of privacy from our nosy neighbors. Because we were focused on the family front, the home front. But you think about even the family unit. Marriages falling apart. You're estranged to your kids. You're angry towards your mom. You feel like the dinner table is political all the time. You're just trying to keep the family unit together. Relationships, they become hard. We feel like we're marching in the opposite direction that we are designed to be. Why? Why is this? Well, if you're familiar with the story in Genesis, 2 chapters later, if you know the story, Adam and Eve choose independence from God. They want to be like God. In this story where they actually eat the fruit, this first act of disobedience, and this is where sin starts to creep and seep its way into the created order and flips everything around. Cornelius Planté kind of continues his thought. He says, sin's most immediate goal is not so much to undo the creation, but violently to reconfigure the pattern of independence. What God put together, sin separates, and what God separated, sin puts together. Everything is flipped upside down. And sin sabotaged our design in that way. Caught in the act of disobedience, Adam immediately rushes towards self-preservation. Right? Genesis 3:12, the woman you put with me, she gave me some fruit from the tree, and I ate it. Betrayal, suspicion, self-preservation, relationships broken vertically, horizontally. And it's only a couple pages later. If you're familiar with the biblical narrative of Cain and Abel, Cain, out of jealousy, kills his brother Abel, and God asking a rhetorical question, hey, where is Abel? Cain's defensive response, what am I, my brother's keeper? Every man for himself. This just becomes the mantra that echoes through the biblical story and is even that far off from what is today. Our highest virtue, I would say, in the culture in this moment that we live in is probably independence, isn't it? And it starts pretty young. My 4-year-old daughter is at the stage where she wants to be a big girl, and she loves to do everything herself, and that means pouring like juice or milk, and juice is fine, it's these small little cartons. Those like 4-liter things of milk that we have? She's 4 years old, and she has to do it herself. So you see her pull out the milk out of the fridge, and she's going over the counter, and she has a little pink cup, and I've never seen a face so strained. Like every muscle is like, she's just like she's shaking this thing, trying to get it in the cup, and it's just going, and like, do you want, I grab the cup, she's like, Daddy, don't help. And I'm like, okay, I just like back, I'm like watching a train wreck. There's milk all over the counter, and I just have to watch it happen. She wants her independence. And for us, it's not pouring milk, but it's ideas of like who we are, our identity, our purpose. We want to control those things. And they're masked and wrapped in these endearing statements like, be your most authentic self. Be true to yourself. What's the cost of that, those statements? The shadow side is that resisting anything or anyone that would jeopardize that. So we're justified in rejecting anyone, dismissing friendships, canceling relationships. Anyone that would challenge my pursuit on the authentic self is usually heard in statements like, they just weren't good for my mental health. Or I feel like they're just putting their truth on me. Or whatever it is, I didn't want to be around that negative energy, so I left. In short, what we're really saying is no one can tell me how to live or how to define myself but me. And as Martin Heidegger, a German philosopher, kind of, I think, speaks to the times so well and articulates what authenticity really actually is. He says, this is a matter of seizing my ownmost possibility. Authenticity then always looks like emergence from them, a refusal of conformity, because inauthenticity, by definition, is a failure to resist the domination of others, the tyranny of the they. Summarize, to be authentic, to be your truest self, to find that and explore that really is done independently, alone, and to look inward and to get influenced by anyone around you is only compromise. That's the message of today, and this is stitched in all of us more than we probably want to admit. remember having a friends over, a couple, and we were good friends. We were talking about just life. We're having dinner together, probably running out of conversation by the time dessert rolls around, and we're talking about personality tests. We're just running out of things to talk about. What do you have? Myers-Briggs, Berkman, Enneagram, all this stuff. And we get into Myers-Briggs, and they're like, what are you? I'm like, I don't know. Like, I hate someone telling me who I am, but I also am curious, like, what my Myers-Briggs is. So I'm like, I'm an ENFJ. It's like, whatever. And then I remember one of the spouses on the other side said, oh, no, you're not. Like, you're actually like IN blah, blah, TZY or something. I don't know what it was. But I remember just this visceral reaction of like, who are you? Like, I know. I'm like, no, I actually know. It makes sense. Like, ENFJ, they do this, this, and this, and this. And she's like, no, you're not. You're an IDJY or whatever. And I'm like, we actually got in an argument, like full-blown argument across the dinner. Like, dessert was wrapped up quick. You know what I mean? Like, because this visceral reaction, like, don't tell me who I am. Who are you? And I think we all have that protective nature in who we are. But even the most vicious passion to go the road of self-discovery alone, there's this unquenchable appetite to be known and to know others in our wiring, to be seen, understood, and have others tag along in that journey with us. I think this is where technology plays a really interesting role. It becomes this companion in that journey that we should be savagely suspicious of, because it sells us both. That we can have our independence and have some shape and form of relational connection. You know, that story of Eliza that I opened with, this program at MIT, this computer that they're putting little questions in, the students, it was interesting, the experiment, they wanted to not only engage with this computer, but they wanted to be alone with it. They wanted to have one-on-one connections with it. They wanted to tell it its secrets, to say the truest parts of who they are. Hundreds of students were in line to experience this Eliza program. To have this smallest gesture of pseudo-empathy was enough for them to engage in the deepest, darkest secrets of their lives. They usually started with phrases like, how are you, Eliza, or like, how was your day, or whatever. Within 3 to 4 exchanges later, they're typing in things like, I just broke up with my girlfriend, I'm terrified. I think I'm gonna fail science this year and I don't know what to do. My sister died. And the research states that none of these students were deceived. They knew Eliza's limitations, but they were eager to fill in the gaps. This is what they call the Eliza effect. And I don't think this is that far from home for all of us. We are tempted to immediately settle for the lowest relational engagement if it doesn't demand much of us. And obviously with Eliza aside, I don't know if you guys remember, do you guys remember Tamagotchi? So I was 9 when Tamagotchi came out. It's this like little toy, egg-shaped, had a little digital screen, 8-bit, and a little creature would be on that thing, and it would hatch in a sense, and then your job, there'd be little buttons on it to take care of the Tamagotchi. You'd feed it, change its diaper, play with it, make sure it had a nap. Like, you had this nurturing responsibility to take care of it. These things sold like hotcakes when I was 9 years old. Like, everyone had a Tamagotchi. Everyone was sitting on the ground on the playground playing with their Tamagotchi. You were a loser if you didn't have a Tamagotchi at the playground. And so I, as a 9-year-old, had to have a Tamagotchi. It was a must. And I remember finally begging my parents, can I please have this Tamagotchi? They finally caved. And we were phoning around from toy store to toy store. And there's finally like this sketchy toy store that had a couple left. So we rushed over that night, me and my dad. And they didn't have any Tamagotchis. They did these random like knockoff Tamagotchis. So usually like it's a little duck or like a cute little creature that like, it makes sense. The relationship is like, it's a pet. The only ones left were these knockoff ones were like human babies. And as a 9-year-old self, I'm like, this is weird, but okay, let's go. I grabbed the human baby one. And so 9-year-old Victor wasn't playing hockey, wasn't going out riding his bikes with friends. No, he was too busy changing the digital diaper on his little human baby Tamagotchi. I think about my dad in that moment, like baby boomer, like could fix cars when he's probably like 9 years old. Like looking down at me at the toy store, like, this is gonna be okay. Like, he's gonna turn out okay. We're gonna pray for him. It was a weird time. But the research showed with these Tamagotchis that kids were so attached to these things because they felt the burden of they had to take care of these Tamagotchis, that they went everywhere with them because if they didn't take care of them, they would die, and they often did. And for a lot of students or kids, this would be devastating when these Tamagotchis would die. They would feel the ownership over that, so much so that many students would, in closure, they would actually write poems to their Tamagotchis. I have a poem. Do you want to hear it? This is Pumpkin, okay? It's a moment. Shh. My baby died in his sleep. I will forever weep. Then his batteries went dead. Now he lives in my head. Rest in peace, Pumpkin. But here's what Sherry Turkle says around this. Dependence on a robot presents itself as risk-free. But when one becomes accustomed to companionship without demands, catch this, life with people just seems overwhelming. Dependence on a person is risky and it makes it subject to rejection. And I think Eliza and Tamagotchi aside, technology at large, this is what it offers. It's an easier approach to scratching that relational itch that's innate to all of us, but in a way that doesn't demand anything from us, and we can maintain our independence. That is the vision of technology that it offers us. And an overplayed probably example of this is social media that we're all very well aware of. On Instagram, TikTok, all these things, we're creating these filtered parts of our lives that are so even disconnected from how we truly live our lives that ultimately are just kind of products we offer in exchange from one another. Like, do you know that you've probably seen those videos of, like, usually it's a woman who's been like holding a hand and it's being videotaped this way, and she's like wandering through, I don't know, like a cave or like some meadow, and she's like, wow, and all this stuff. She's looking around, and she's on some exotic beach, and she's like, oh, come along. She's like, and what happens is then she posts like, this is my honeymoon, just my honeymoon with my husband or whatever it is. And I'm like, that's a product. Like, who's the dude on the other side of that? Like, who's, any guy when he's like 16 years old, when he's thinking about his future honeymoon, is probably like, I just want to eat good food, have lots of sex, and like sleep on the beach. That's my vision of my honeymoon. But instead, no, he's the camera guy being like doing this, being dragged along with his now wife, just like, this is okay. This is a part of what I signed up for. If they caught my honeymoon, it'd be like me eating Doritos in my hotel room trying to find the English channel in Mexico. That would be, I don't know if I put that on Instagram. But it's not just Instagram. It's not just social media. We know this. It's the small little things too, isn't it? It's texting, brother, sister, or parent in the same house because you don't want to have a conversation in person. It's Zooming with like no video because you just want to be disconnected from the conversation. It's gaming. That's your only form of socializing because you don't want to see people in real life. It's all these disembodied experiences for our lives. This is what relationships have looked like. So technology has become a mediator, a buffer between relationships to protect ourselves from being truly vulnerable, like to being ourselves, to giving ourselves to other people, having actually meaningful relationships. And look, I get this. I get it. I want to be seen in a positive light. I want to frame how I'm viewed. I don't want to show the good or the bad and the ugly parts of me. I'll make sure you see the filtered version of my life. Like, I get that. I don't want to be vulnerable. I'm in the same camp as you who are struggling with, I like the idea of a medium that keeps people at arm's distance. I get that. Where I can have a group message that's nice and tidy, we just throw memes at each other and we feel like we're having some sort of relationship. I can dodge a couple phone calls here and there. I would sit down with my barber and I can immediately pull up my phone to communicate to him I don't want to have a conversation. We all do this, don't we? We keep people at a distance. And I'm not sure it's panning out the way we hoped it would. The culture's kind of gotten weird these days. And I don't know if you know the Daily Hive. It's a Vancouver article. It usually tells you about things that are happening in the city. Like there's a new cafe that opened up, and the best tacos are over there, like top 10 this, top 10 that. And recently just posted top 10 places you can cool down and cry your eyes out. The stock photo was awesome. It was like a sunset with a guy crying in front of it. And I definitely clicked it. The second place is the Vancouver Library, if you want to go there to cry. But this is maybe like a bit of a pulse on where we're at these days. Look, technology isn't bad. That's not what I'm trying to say here. It's connected us in ways that are amazing. But maybe us rushing towards technology has left us a little more isolated than we signed up for. And Jesus, like, what does Jesus' life and his story and his teaching, what does it speak to this moment? This God who is extremely relational that we talked about, this fountain overflowing of relationality and love, overflowing on his creation, he refuses to be distant from us. Like in the Old Testament, he sets up the tent of meeting that he would come and meet with God. And that wasn't enough. So he set up the temple that you would engage appropriately with God in fellowship. That wasn't enough. He spoke through the prophets on his behalf. That wasn't close enough. That in John 1, he says, and the word became flesh. He came down, he wanted to be with us, he dwelt among us. One translation says he moved into the neighborhood, and we have seen his glory as only a son from the Father, full of grace and truth. He became human. He wanted us to hug him, to touch him, to eat with him, to be present, to know him, to cry with him. He moves towards relationships, not only those who are difficult, but literal enemies of him. Those who want nothing to do with him, he continually moves towards us. That is who he is. And he helps us reimagine a vision of what relationships can look like, full of grace and truth. But he did this in such an unfamiliar way. It was so foreign to us, where he saw you, all the good, the bad, the ugly, and he still moved towards you. Like Kristen and I, we bought a home recently, about 2 years ago. It's a great place in Surrey. We're super grateful for it and all this stuff. But what you do when you buy a home is you get an inspection report. And so we got this inspection report, and it tells you everything that's wrong with the house, right? It tells you if there's like flood damage, this furnace is overdue for repair, or if there's like the electrical is issue, potential problems in the future, all this stuff. So you have everything before you make the purchase and decide if you want to or not. And I genuinely believe like God has your full inspection report. Like all the good, the bad, the ugly, all the things you've messed up in, all the potential problems, all the things that are in your life that no one sees but you. You know, the house for some of you is just in ruin. Like, like the mold you painted over, like the hole in the wall you put a picture over. He knows all of it, and he's still buying. Where many would look at this investment like bad investment and pass by. Jesus leans in and says, I'm buying that. That's who he is. That's how he does relationships. And this does something to us. To expose us this type of unconditional love. To be invited in the type of relationship. It paints a vision of what true, authentic relationships can look like. As we abide in Jesus, connected to him, we are compelled with a vision that's not centered around our independence, but towards others, postured towards others like God is. 1 John 4 says, we love because he first loved us. That's the order. And here's how this plays out in our lives. In a day and age that has made independence and self-determination the highest value, uses technology to pattern and cushion relationships, make them more palatable. There's a large chasm between us and others, a chasm that's usually filled with suspicion. They become the other people. I think COVID just unintentionally revved this up. There's more other people, other camps, other views, other points, us versus them. It's all these, the problem became, when you're going out in public, is over and over reminding the problem became people. Are you going to infect me? Are you safe for my family? All these pieces, COVID made other people the problem. Trust has become a currency. We are all short in these days. The other people, can I trust them? And while Jesus summarizes the commandments of the law, he says, love your neighbors yourself. How can we love what we don't trust? And here's where Jesus calls us in a climate of depleted trust, increased suspicion, to do relationships radically differently. There's Andy Crouch, he kind of piggybacks on a known psychological expression called rupture and repair, not rapture, and extends it further. So rupture and repair is this baseline for all trust in relationships. He says, the only way I come to trust anyone is to have some degree of interruption in the relationship. And so this is the thing that deepens and builds trust relationally. So the first degree, the first rupture is called absence of renewed presence. That's our first layer. So it's usually like a mother and a baby. The mother gives the baby to the aunt, goes into the kitchen, returns later. Or are you sending your kid to preschool? The parent then comes back and returns. There's separation and renewed presence. You are gone and you are now back. These are the building blocks of trust in the relationship. And the second layer, a deeper rupture, is called failure and recovery. It's not really anyone's particular fault, just life happens. And this is usually like when a dad drops off his kid or, has to pick up his kid from school. Gets a flat tire on the way, he's 30 minutes late, kind of thing. It's not really anyone's life. Life happens, but there's a failure that happened. In a recovery, the dad will buy ice cream for the kid on the way home to show, hey, this isn't normative. This isn't normative for our life and how we live in our relationship. There needs to be a recovery in that. The third piece where I think cultural climate today, very few venture, but Jesus calls us to dive in wholeheartedly, is sin and forgiveness. To be hurt and wounded by others and to respond in mercy. To Jesus who was crucified on that cross, spat on, ridiculed, stripped down naked, mocked. He yells out to the Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they do. And he intercedes to the Father on behalf of his executioners in that moment. And Jesus calls us, look what I am doing. Look what I am about. Look at my love. Look at my mercy. Look at my forgiveness. Look how I do relationships. It says, come, do the same. Join me in how I live my life. Instead of canceling someone, profiling them as negative energy, the gospel calls on us to go deeper and find even richer relationships and ones that feel like they're in ruin. Yes, there's loss. Yes, there's permanent damage. Yes, there's things that will never be recovered. But to move forward in a resilient friendship by the power and the goodness of the Holy Spirit, that you would enjoy forgiveness, mercy that the world has never seen or tasted, and that you can actually have a deeper trust that very few experience. That is the call of the gospel on our lives. Why? Why do we do this? 2 Corinthians 3:18 says, and we all, with unveiled face, behold the glory of the Lord Jesus, and being transformed in the same image from one degree of glory to another, because you are made in his image. Like so much of the mission of Jesus is to create a new creation in you, to full circle, to bring you back to that nostalgic garden experience, to remember what it feels like to mirror this extraordinary, loving, and relational God that you were called to be. Remember what that looks like to mirror that. But how? What is the way forward in this? How do we be people that are forgiving, merciful, loving, relationships that have deep trust? And especially in light of what Heidegger says earlier about authenticity is about pushing others away and defining yourself. And he actually even presses it further. It says there's really only two options in relationships in this current moment that we're in. It's assimilation, which he says you obviously don't want to do, and objectification. You either join them or push them away. You be devoured or devour. That's what's on offer. And Jesus attacks this way of thinking head on in Luke 10. The Good Samaritan. A familiar story of, Jesus tells a story of a man who was walking on a journey and was finding his way, and then all of a sudden robbers come and attack him. They strip him down naked. They grab everything of worth and take off and beat him and leave him for dead. Bloody, they just push him over into a ditch and move on. And Jesus says two people walk by, a Levite and a priest. These guys are supposed to be like representations of morality, religious leaders. Like this is what we're supposed to model our lives over. They see the man and they walk by. Why do they walk by? Because they have the same way of thinking that I think is on offer in our current culture. There's only really two options: assimilation. For a Levite or a priest to touch a dying man would make themselves unclean, according to Levitical law. Their status as holy or whatever would change. Their reputation, even their identity would be changed and assimilated into the same one as this dying man is unclean. The only other offer is objectification, which both of them took. They justified leaving the man for dead, seeing him as the other, right? Less than human, undignified, and undeserving of help. And Jesus punches through with the third option, the Samaritan, who is an enemy of the Jewish people. Gets low, leans in, humanizes this broken person, generously aids him back to health at any cost. The funny thing about this story is that the only reason Jesus told it is because in verse 25, one guy in the crowd, a lawyer, said, "Hey, where can I find life?" And Jesus answers, his response, "Look at the Samaritan. The one who gives his life for another, the cruciform life, living for the other as you were made to do, showing sacrificial love as Jesus first showed you." And in a world that is marching towards independence, isolation, self-determination, loneliness, life is found with Jesus, in Jesus, who literally marches the opposite way towards others with love, mercy, and forgiveness, and empowers us to do the same. This is the way forward. Let's pray. Father, in a world that feels isolated, if we're really honest, you punch through all the blurriness of technology and the current climate that we're in and show us, reveal to us what love, what it truly means to live out how we're wired to be. We know in this room there are people that are just struggling relationships, like family members, friends, there's burnt trust, all this stuff. But you show us through the gospel, this sacrificial love, how to extend mercy that's undeserved, how to extend forgiveness that's undeserved, how to receive mercy, how to move forward with resilient relationships that have scars, that have wounds, but actually can move forward in the gospel and the goodness of you. Lord, I pray that would be a church, that this would be what we're known for. We just do relationships differently. And some of you, that's just as simple as like joining a community group, and that's the next move for you. For others, it's I need to actually forgive my mom because you showed me how. You showed me what forgiveness actually looks like. While we were still enemies of you, you died for us. And so, Lord, in this room, those who are watching online, all our sites, I pray as people are just thinking about those relationships in their lives, I just pray you begin to identify what does it look like as a next step? What does it look like to move towards people instead of move towards the comfort and the promise, the lure of just isolation and independence and thinking about just yourself, but to posture ourselves differently towards the other like you do, mirroring you as a loving and relational God. I pray you'd empower us to do this in your name. Amen.
In the darkness we were waiting, without hope, without light. Till from heaven you came running, there was mercy in your eyes. To fulfill the law and prophets, to a virgin came the word. From a throne of endless glory, to a cradle in the dirt. Of kings, to reveal the kingdom coming and to reconcile the lost, to redeem the whole creation. You did not despise the cross, for even in your suffering you saw to the other side. Knowing this was our salvation, Jesus, for our sake you died. Praise the Father, praise till that stone was moved for good, for the Lamb had conquered death. And the dead rose from their tombs, and the angels stood in awe, for the souls of all who'd come to the Father are restored. And the church of Christ was born. Then the Spirit lit the flame. Now this gospel truth of old shall not kneel, shall not fade. And by His blood and in His name, in His freedom I am free. For the love of Jesus Christ, who has resurrected me. And praise forever to the King of Kings.
Praise God. It is so good we serve a God that is the King of Kings, bigger and better than anything that we can hope or imagine. And what a fantastic sermon, all about relationships and just who we are supposed to be in the image of God. I love the image that Victor was talking about the supercomputer in the 80s. This Eliza, this massive computer. And it was interesting how people started to tell their deepest, darkest secrets, really serious stuff. I thought, isn't that how relationships should be? I thought the reason that would happen is, don't we want someone to really know who we are, our deepest, darkest secrets? And I think we can easily not do that because of fear, shame. What if I tell this to this person? How will they see me? Well, the computer doesn't have a reaction. So we know we can enter into that relationship without fear and shame. I think what a great image pointer to how relationships should be, and relationships should be with God.
Oh, 100%. That's so good. And I think what he said too is we want to keep people at an arm's distance, which is 100%. Like, we want them to see what we want them. And so I think, what you're saying is to recognize that God knows every single part of us, like the ugly, the gross parts of us, like, and He still loves us, is just a wild concept to kind of wrap our minds around, and for us to be the church. And so I'm challenged personally, like, how do we go from here, like this week, even today, how do we love others in our community, love people around us, like, despite the grossness, like, that we might get a taste for, like, instead of judging them, like, how do we love others in the way that God loves us, and want to be loved in the same way, that we can be vulnerable and share in the things that are in our hearts that we don't want to necessarily. So I think that was really beautiful.
Yeah. I think there's two big steps that I take away from what you just said. One, take a step out, and what would it look like to share something with another person? Someone that you trust, someone that you know. Say, hey, I want to build into this relationship. Here's something I'm going through. Here's a challenge. Maybe here's something I'm ashamed of. Can I share that with you? And that might, I don't know their response, but taking a step out in faith and doing that. And also doing that with God. Sharing with God, say, God, this is who I am. He already knows. He knows all things, but a relationship is about stepping into it. So by us just taking some time and praying and say, God, this is what's going on in my heart. This is what I've been through. This is something that I'm just ashamed of. And we serve a God that forgives. What a fantastic, we serve a God that forgives. Like, hear that, know that. And if you need help, if you are walking through any of this stuff, we're right here. We would love to come alongside you, pray with you, encourage you, be that voice that hears what you have to share and say, we love you, God loves you, nothing has changed. So if you want to reach out, please go to thisisvillagechurch.com/connect with us. We would love to hear from you and know that we are praying for you this week.